A lot of us lost our firstborn, either while still in the womb or after birth. Not having a child to take home from the hospital and care for can be extremely isolating. Today we're going to talk about two important topics. Number one, our identity as a father. And number two, how fathers need to be treated. For some of us dads, we may be struggling currently to accept being called one. That may sound offensive, or that we're not willing to accept what happened, or worse, we're in denial that our baby even existed. This deep-seated identity crisis is beyond such shallow thinking. We're grieving the loss of a child that we will never get to parent, to goof around with, to play games, to tell them stories of our own childhood, to share life with. Hello, we're Jeff
and Tony Brabeck, the founders of Our Little Sparrows, Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support.
All right, so we're going to dive into the first of our 2 points. Point number one, our identity as a father. And what I mean by that is some of us have a difficult time being called dad or father. Mm-hmm. So naturally, dads have a different connection with their children. Their identity as a father is, in my mind, first and foremost about their duties, their fatherly duties. So raising a child, providing for a child. And obviously, as the child gets older, the relational aspect of that relationship grows and goes deeper. So the connection, the strong connection that a mom has is instantaneously at the beginning because they carry that child is my point of view. And our connection as dads grows over time, if we're given that time, right? And that's what we're talking about today, not being given that time. So I think that one of the things that we'd like to talk about today is not feeling worthy, right? So, the whole thing about not being called a dad or a father, not sure exactly how we feel about that we're wrestling with those thoughts and ideas in our head of wanting to even be identified as a dad or a father in public. So there is a natural disconnect, and I referenced this a second ago. It's a different relationship that guys have with their baby. They didn't carry the baby. They did not give birth, that's for sure. And they have no idea of the physical and emotional maternal relationship. So a few episodes previous to this one, Tony actually shared about a maternal connection that she had with our firstborn, Olivia. And she specifically shared something that I had never heard her say before, that she was Olivia's life source. And when Olivia was born, that life source was separated, that connection, right? The umbilical cord, literally, is what we're talking about here. But it's more than a physical connection. It's an emotional connection that she had with Olivia. And that's no different for you moms out there. No different at all. So it's different relationship that we have with our babies, that our partners, moms, have with the baby. Some of us don't feel like we belong. I think that's, in our society, we accept that our position as father within our own family, but struggle with titles, right? In other areas of our life. So, and that could be anything outside of the house, anything that you guys can think of. I'm not even going to rattle off a few because I want you to think of those things, and for yourself. So just think of those things outside of your family, outside of your house, that impact you and how you feel being called dad or father. And that's what we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. So we are a father, but we don't feel like we belong in the dad's club. It's like odd man out, or you're not in the circle, right? You're outside of the circle of relationship. What do I mean by that? There's something about feeling left out of the circle of traditional fatherhood. And traditional fatherhood is all about how we can relate to other fathers, right? And how can we relate to those fathers that have living children? I think that our experience, however short, however long, is dramatically different than the father of a living child. In their eyes, it's in our perspective, looking on the inside out, we're always going to see fathers of living children as their relationship being infinitely longer and ours being snuffed out and short. Mm-hmm. So they have a story to tell. They have one story after another story, and we only have one, and often it's tragic.
I just want to add something here, because I think even as a mother, I think for both mothers and fathers, there is a certain kind of mold that we put mothers and fathers into. you have 1, 2, 3, however many kids that are visible, we can see them. But I think what we don't often see and um, is the invisibility sometimes of motherhood and fatherhood. And I think that's the trouble that we face
Right.
as
Like you don't have 2.5 children.
yeah, we don't have 2 kids, 3 kids. We gave birth to a daughter, and she was our firstborn. So we don't have any other kids. We were not pregnant and anticipating another child at that time. So there's this sense of feeling of like I'm invisible, and I feel that fathers have um, this kind of same feeling as well of not only do they feel invisible perhaps, but they don't fit the mold of what
Right.
society traditionally calls fathers or fatherhood. And so there's this struggle or a wrestling with Father's Day, especially for those that may not have any other children at home visible to the rest of the world.
Mm.
But you have a father that had a son or daughter that died, and do they call themselves dad? Do they want to be honored on Father's Day? So it's a different struggle, something that fathers have to kind of navigate themselves. And as the wife and mother of the baby, sometimes it's hard for me to know and understand what is the need of Jeff and or the father, and how do I come alongside and support that.
But I mean, I love it that we're addressing like the needs of the father and what their desires are, their thoughts and their feelings. And I know, I mean, I wanted to talk about this. I wrote about this, so it might sound funny that I'm about to say what I'm about to say, but it's like it's easier for the dad to for the male. Let's just put it on that level. It's easier for the male to look to the female for lead on this. It's easy for the male to say, "Don't worry about me. I want to focus on you." And what we're trying to say here is that also happens in society to both the mom and the dad. It's the invisible, and that their needs and their wants, their desires are not addressed. They're not asked of. The irony of that is that a lot of times that also does take place between the mom and the dad, the male and the female in the relationship of the lost child as well, family. And this is a perfect example of it, is that I would rather defer to what her needs are and not worry about mine.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, it negates me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's, yeah, it negates me
Yeah.
in the process.
Well, and
It also alienates, has the potential of alienating the mom and making her feel like, well, we're not gonna share in this acknowledging
mm-hmm.
of the baby, and it's all on me, or it's just about me. And it's like, no, I want it to be about us.
Mm-hmm.
So although it is easier to pass the buck than it is to say, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is what I would like, these are my thoughts and my feelings. We actually need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what moms desire,
Right.
from from the dads,
Mm-hmm.
whether they want to say it or not, and whether the dads are willing to listen, I think is key.
I think just to add, I know he keeps talking about this, but as the mother, we see the father as the father. I think it's, at least for me, it was a natural desire to want to honor you on Father's Day. And so I'm glad like we're talking about this and kind of bringing to light things that may not have otherwise been said. But that you would probably want
Defer.
to, yeah, even
Yep.
just say hearing you say that makes sense to me. And I get that. I think too, maybe fathers need to know that as the mother, even though yes, we carried the child, we birthed the baby, and we had that physical connection and an emotional connection to the baby, whereas the father is kind of like watching it outside of that. And but we see you as every part of this journey to parenthood. And so I think the mother's natural desire, again, I guess just speak for myself, but that was my desire, was to honor Jeff on Father's Day. And we had that conversation, and we talked about this in an earlier episode where I needed to ask Jeff what he felt like, how he felt about being honored on Father's Day. And that was a difficult conversation for me at first, but a few days later, I went back and I dug a little bit deeper and was able to understand the broader perspective of where Jeff was coming from.
Right.
And
On the first Father's Day
the
after
very first,
losing Olivia. Yeah.
And so that was helpful to me to understand and know how to support him. But also I want fathers to know that we do see you as part of the journey to fatherhood and parenthood. And even though you may not see it yourself, so it's kind of like a lesson for me to have to step back and let you be the lead in Father's Day. You know what I mean? Like, you wanted to spend Father's Day, not really do anything special, just at home, and be okay with that.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think
like that's enough.
Yeah, that was enough for you.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore that was enough for me. It wasn't that he was saying he wasn't the father to Olivia, that he wasn't her dad. He totally is, and he knows that, and that's not what he was trying to say. But I think he just felt like,
outside of our family, the conversations at that time to me were very uncomfortable. Whether I showed it or not, it was very uncomfortable. Like, all these dads have all these, we go to church and it's all about Father's Day, and they talk about all the living babies. They don't talk about necessarily talk about fathers of loss. And so I just, it's just that undue pressure, that recognized to some, but in the back of your mind that if you go, something's just going to be off that day. And for me, it was not wanting to hear the recognition of the fathers and saying all the dads stand, and it's like, I just don't feel that way. I don't feel like I'm in the group or in the circle like we've been talking about. I specifically wrote about the traditional Father's Day, and it's all the dads telling story after story, or just laughing because their kid did something the other day, right? That's what I mean by story after story. It's like, well, my story is very short and it's tragic. And I mean, if someone asked, I was freely told. Like, that was never an issue for me. But nor was I ready to really put myself, in front of others on that day. I just wasn't into it.
Yeah.
Just didn't feel.
And that's okay.
About it.
I think even Mother's Day, we kept it pretty low key too. So, however, you choose to spend the day.
And Christmas, man.
Yeah.
Because we lost Olivia in October, and then Christmas.
Yeah.
The holidays were right there.
Pretty much the first year was very low key. We were very isolated and kept to ourselves. A lot of the holidays and things that came up afterwards, we were very, kept low to her. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, yeah. You say isolated, someone else might see it as something different, but
yeah, we're just ourselves.
Low key compared to normal.
Right. And that's okay.
So there's really no way around this, you guys. And that's why we're having this episode. That's why I felt drawn and wanted to talk about this as Father's Day approaches. The reality is that this is set in stone. This is not something that we get to control. It's life's outcomes. And there's a lot of them that we don't have control over. All I can say is to realize that your child, no matter how short-lived, in the womb or out of the womb, matters just as much as any other. No one has the right to diminish or compare your child with theirs. What you choose to share and how you share about your baby is up to you and is the right way. Know that awkward questions, statements, assumptions are going to be made by others, and it might be tough to figure out how you wish to navigate in and through those situations. That's something that you're going to have to learn as you go. I can tell you from my own personal experience, for me, almost 7 years after losing Olivia, it did get easier. It does get easier to talk about my baby. My Olivia Hope Brabeck, who I met and held for only 5 hours. All right, on to point number 2, how fathers need to be treated. We both believe strongly that fathers belong in the pregnancy journey. Fathers are essential to the story. We believe fathers need to be recognized and celebrated as dad. This may be difficult for some to accept and may change over time. This is, however, part of the journey.
All right, as we wrap up this episode today, I just wanted to leave you guys with a couple of thoughts. Father's Day can be a very challenging day for dads of child loss. We're forced to reevaluate our identity from the traditional sense. Some men do not struggle with this and others do on different levels, as we've talked about today. The best thing that we can do is to remind each other that they are a father, no matter what, if their child is living or not. No one can diminish that title for another. You are and will always be known as dad.